Hey guys, tonight we are going to explore a very strange and very wet corner of the medieval justice system. We're going to a time and a place where there was no forensic evidence, no detective work, and no jury of your peers in the way we'd understand it. Instead, to prove your innocence, you might be subjected to a divine swimming lesson, a sacred test where the purest substance on earth, water, would be asked to judge the purity of your soul. With our modern ideas about justice, I think it as fair to say that most of us wouldn't survive the legal system, let alone the punishment. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd also love to know where you're tuning in from tonight, and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see this community assembling from every corner of the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The morning begins like any other. It is an ordinary day in your small, quiet village, a world defined by the familiar rhythms of the sun, the seasons, and the church bell. You are outside your wattle and daub hut, mending a fence, the air cool and smelling of damp earth and wood smoke. Then, a cry of pure anguish shatters the morning peace. It is the voice of your neighbor, Godwin. You, along with the rest of the village, hurry towards his small yard to see what has happened. The scene is a tragedy. Godwin is on his knees beside the still, lifeless body of his prized brown ox. The animal lies on its side in the mud, its eyes glassy and staring, its great body already beginning to bloat. There are no marks on it, no signs of struggle or sickness from the day before. It has died suddenly, mysteriously in the night. This is not just the loss of an animal. In your world, this is a catastrophe. This single ox was half of Godwin's plowing team. It was a walking, breathing symbol of his family's wealth, the engine of his harvest, the difference between a winter of comfort and a winter of starvation. Its sudden death is a ruinous blow, a stroke of terrible and inexplicable misfortune. The other villagers gather around, their faces a mixture of pity and a secret fearful relief that it was not their animal that was struck down. They speculate in low voices. Was it a strange sickness? Did it eat a poisonous weed? Was it simply its time, an act of God? But Godwin is not looking for a natural explanation. His face, contorted with grief and a rising directionless anger, scans the crowd of sympathetic faces. And then his eyes lock onto yours. And in them you see a flicker of something new, a dawning terrible certainty. You and Godwin have had bad blood for years. It is a quiet, simmering feud, the kind that thrives in small villages, where families live on top of each other for generations. It began with a petty dispute over a few feet of land that separates your property from his. It was fed by a quarrel over a shared debt, and it has been kept alive by years of resentful silence and averted gazes. You are not friends, and in a small, close-knit community, to not be friends is to be a potential enemy. He points a shaking, dirt-caked finger directly at you. His voice, when it comes, is a raw shout that cuts through the murmuring of the crowd. You, he screams, this is your doing. My ox was strong and healthy yesterday at sunset. And you have always been jealous of it. You have always looked upon my good fortune with the evil eye. The crowd falls silent. The accusation hangs in the air, terrible and specific. You crept into my yard in the night. He continues, his voice cracking with rage and grief. You whispered a curse. You killed my ox with your malice, with your witchcraft. The death of the ox was a random, frightening event that could have happened to anyone. It was a mystery, a sign of a chaotic and unpredictable world. But Godwin's accusation has changed everything. It has given the random tragedy a face, a motive, and a culprit. It has given the village a story. Anthropologists and social historians debate the function of such accusations in pre-modern societies. Were they a genuine attempt to find a criminal and enact justice? Or were they a vital social mechanism for managing collective anxiety, for taking a terrifying, meaningless act of misfortune and blaming it on a convenient scapegoat, thereby restoring a sense of order and control to a chaotic world? You are stunned, your heart hammering in your chest. The accusation is absurd, insane. But you see the faces of your neighbors turning to look at you, their expressions of sympathy for Godwin, now tinged with a new, dark suspicion. You vehemently deny the charge. You swear your innocence on your mother's grave, on the bones of the saints, on your own immortal soul. But your panicked words feel thin and weak against the powerful, emotional certainty of Godwin's grief. The accusation has been made. It is your word against his. And in a world where a man's sworn oath can be as powerful as any physical proof, you are now in terrible, terrible danger. The village elders are summoned, and you know, with a cold, sinking feeling, that this is not a matter that can be resolved with a simple fine or an apology. The crime is witchcraft, the consequence is death, and the judgment, you fear, will be left not to men, but to God himself. The accusation hangs in the heavy morning air, as tangible and as foul as the smell of the dead ox at your feet. Witchcraft. The word itself is a condemnation, a verdict before a trial has even begun. The village elders, the senior, land-holding men of the community, whose wisdom is respected, gather around. An informal court is convened right there in the muddy yard, beside the cooling body of the beast. There is no courthouse, no lawyer to speak for you. There is only the custom of your village and the raw, grieving anger of your accuser. You are given the chance to speak, and the words pour out of you in a torrent of panicked denial. You try to use reason, a logic that feels unassailable to you. I was in my hut all night, you plead, your voice trembling. My husband, my children, they can all attest to it. I have no knowledge of the dark arts. I am a good Christian woman. I have no reason to harm Godwin's ox. Your defense, so logical and clear in your own mind, is utterly useless here. In a world where the power of a curse is as real as the power of a sword, your physical alibi is meaningless. A curse can be whispered from a distance. It can be delivered on the wind. It can be hidden in a misplaced glance. The crime you are accused of is a supernatural one, and therefore, natural proof of your innocence is irrelevant. The head elder, a man named Alfred, whose face is a roadmap of long winters, turns his stern gaze from you to Godwin. "Goodman Godwin," he says, his voice low and gravelly, "this is a grave charge you lay against your neighbor. Will you swear a formal oath, before God and these witnesses, that what you say is true? This is the first and most important pillar of your justice system." Godwin, his face a mask of righteous certainty, does not hesitate. He steps forward, places his hand on a small wooden cross that the elder wears around his neck, and swears the oath. His voice rings out across the silent yard. "I swear on my immortal soul, as God is my witness, that this woman, and no other, did, through an act of malice and witchcraft, cause the death of my ox." The oath, once sworn, is a powerful piece of evidence in itself. To swear a false oath is to commit perjury, a mortal sin that would surely damn a man's soul to an eternity in hell. For Godwin to be willing to risk such a thing is seen as a testament to the truth of his accusation. Alfred the elder then turns to you. "You have heard the charge and the oath sworn against you," he says. "Now you may swear your own oath of innocence. But in a matter this grave, your word alone is not enough to counter the oath of your accuser. You must find oath helpers. And here is the heart of your predicament. You must find 12 reputable men from your village, 12 of your neighbors who are standing around you right now, to come forward and support you. They will not be asked to swear that they know you are innocent. How could they? They will be asked to perform a different, more subtle act. They must place their hands on a holy relic, perhaps the knuckle bone of a saint kept in the parish church. and swear that they believe your oath is clean and not perjured. They are not witnesses to the fact. They are character witnesses to the state of your soul. You look desperately around the circle of familiar faces. You search for an ally, for someone who will stand for you. But you see only doubt, fear, and a cold, cautious neutrality. You see the memory of your long simmering feud with Godwin reflected in their eyes. You have not been a good neighbor to him, and he has not been one to you. You have quarreled over land, over livestock, over small, petty things that have now grown into a monstrous, deadly accusation. These men, your neighbors, will not risk Godwin's anger, or the potential wrath of God, to stand for a woman with whom he has had such bad blood. Your friend from yesterday is your juror today, and he is silent. You realize with a sickening certainty that this is not a trial about evidence. It is a public audit of your reputation. Legal historians debate the fundamental purpose of this oath-based system. Was it a primitive and deeply flawed attempt to discover the factual truth of a crime? Or was it actually a surprisingly effective system for resolving disputes by publicly measuring which party held more social capital, with the verdict essentially going to the person more trusted, more valued, and better integrated into the community? In this case, that person is Godwin, the grieving man of property, not you, the woman with a history of quarreling. You cannot find your 12 oath helpers. The elder can see it in your panicked silence. The court is at an impasse. Godwin's oath stands against your unsupported one. There is no physical evidence. There are no witnesses. The truth of what happened in the night is known only to God. Alfred the elder shakes his great, gray head, his expression grim. The testimony of man has failed to find the truth here, he announces to the assembled villagers. The matter is too grave, the crime too dark. When the wisdom of men is not enough, we must turn to a higher court. The judgment must be left to God himself. He looks directly at you, his eyes full of a heavy, pitiless piety. You will be put to the ordeal, he declares. The Judicium Dei, the judgment of God, he and he alone will reveal your guilt or your innocence. The elder's words hang in the air, heavy and irrevocable. The judgment of God. A collective murmur ripples through the crowd of your neighbors. It is a sound of awe, of fear, and of a grim, terrible excitement. The mundane village dispute over a dead ox has now been elevated into a sacred drama, a divine spectacle in which God himself will be the final witness, judge, and jury. There is no appeal from this court. You feel a wave of cold, dizzying terror. You want to scream, to protest, to argue that this is madness, but you are silent. You know that to protest the ordeal is to protest the very will of God. It would be seen as an admission of guilt, a confession from a soul that is afraid to face its Creator. You are trapped. The path has narrowed to this single terrifying trial. The decision to resort to an ordeal is not made lightly. It is a judicial last resort, a solution for a world that lacks the tools to find its own answers. Your crime, the alleged murder of an ox by witchcraft, is a perfect example. There are no witnesses who saw you do it. There is no physical evidence to find. You will not confess. It is your word against Godwin's, and the community cannot determine the truth on its own. When the justice of man fails, the only option left is to appeal to the justice of God. The ordeal is a formal, legal, and spiritual request for a miracle, a plea for divine intervention to cut through the messy, uncertain world of human affairs and reveal a single absolute truth. The village priest, Father John, is summoned. He steps forward into the circle, his black cassock a stark contrast to the earthy browns and greens of the villagers. His presence is crucial. The ordeal is not just a folk tradition or a legal proceeding. It is a profoundly religious ceremony, a sacrament of justice. It is the priest who acts as the master of ceremonies, the one who will invoke God's power and interpret his will. Without the church's blessing and active participation, the ordeal would be seen as mere pagan superstition. The priest's prayers are what transform a physical test into a divine judgment. You look at Father John's face, searching for some sign of pity or doubt, but you find only a grim piety. He sees this not as a cruel punishment, but as a necessary and holy ritual. Theologians and historians of the Church debate the true feelings of the clergy towards the ordeal. Did priests like Father John genuinely believe that God would miraculously intervene in these highly ritualized and often brutal tests to reveal a person's guilt or innocence? Or did many of them, privately, see the ordeal as a primitive, violent, and superstitious pagan custom that they were forced to go along with due to popular pressure and secular law? Was it for them a necessary evil, a way to resolve intractable disputes that they could not get rid of, which they tried to control and sanctify as best they could? Father John confers quietly with the elder, Alfred. The rest of the villagers wait in a respectful, fearful silence. The decision has been made that an ordeal will take place. Now they must decide which form it will take. This is not your choice. It will be decided for you, based on the nature of the crime, your own status, and the custom of the region. You see Godwin, your accuser, nodding grimly. For him, the ordeal is a perfect solution. He is utterly convinced of your guilt. He believes that his righteous anger is aligned with the will of God, and that God will surely reveal your sin for all to see. He has placed his faith not in the judgment of his neighbors, but in the certainty of a divine sign. Your own feelings are a chaotic storm of fear and a strange, desperate hope. The justice of your neighbors, you have already seen, has failed you. Your reputation, stained by your old feud, has condemned you. Perhaps you think in a moment of desperate, magical thinking, God truly is the only one who can save you. Perhaps he, who knows the truth of your innocence, will perform a miracle. Perhaps this terrifying ritual is your only real hope of clearing your name. Alfred the Elder raises his hand, and the murmuring of the crowd ceases. The court of man has failed to find the truth, he announces. The court of God shall now be convened. The form of the ordeal has been decided. He looks at you, his eyes cold and distant, seeing not a terrified neighbor, but an object of divine inquiry. You brace yourself, waiting to hear which specific, terrible test you will have to endure to prove the innocence you have been shouting all along. The elder looks at you, his face a grim, unreadable mask. The judgment has been passed. An ordeal. But which one? Your mind, slick with terror, begins to cycle through the terrible possibilities, the different ways that God can be asked to reveal a hidden truth. Your first thought is of the ordeal by hot iron. You have seen it performed once before, years ago, on a man accused of stealing from the church. You remember the great fire being built in the village square, the solemnity of the priest as he blessed a heavy, crude bar of iron and placed it in the flames. You remember the accused man's face, pale with terror, as the blacksmith, his hands protected by thick leather, pulled the glowing, shimmering, red-hot iron from the fire. And you remember the man's scream as he was forced to take the iron in his bare hands and carry it for a distance of 9 paces before dropping it. His burned hand was then immediately bound and sealed with the priest's own wax seal. 3 days later, the bandage was removed in front of the entire village. The wound was red, blistered, and beginning to fester. It was a clear sign of his guilt. God had refused to perform a miracle of healing. Then your mind turns to the ordeal of hot water. It is less common in your region, but you have heard the stories. A great cauldron of water is heated over a fire until it is bubbling and steaming. The priest drops a small, blessed stone into the roiling water. The accused is then required to plunge their arm into the cauldron, down to the elbow, to retrieve the stone. As with the iron, the scalded arm is then bound and sealed, and everyone waits for 3 days to see if God will show his favor by allowing the wound to heal cleanly, or show his wrath by allowing it to putrefy. These are the ordeals of fire and heat. You know that for men of the cloth, for priests accused of a crime, there is a different, more subtle test, the ordeal of the cursed morsel, the corsond. A priest in a neighboring shire was once accused of stealing from his own parish. He was subjected to this ordeal. He was given a small piece of dry bread and cheese, which had been consecrated with a special mass. He had to place it in his mouth and swallow it while proclaiming his innocence. The belief is that a throat that is speaking a perjured oath cannot physically swallow a piece of holy food. The priest, his guilt heavy in his soul, choked on the morsel and was immediately condemned. As you stand there, your heart pounding, you wonder how the elders choose. Why is one man sentenced to the iron, another to the water? Why do the priests get the seemingly gentle test of the bread and cheese? Legal historians debate the complex social logic behind the assignment of ordeals. Was it based on your social status? A great lord, you know, could demand a trial by combat, allowing his champion to fight your accuser's champion, with God granting victory to the righteous. Was it based on the nature of the crime, with theft being tested by one method and murder by another? Or was it sometimes based on your gender, with some ordeal seen as more fitting for a woman than for a man? Your agonizing speculation is cut short. Alfred, the elder, speaks again, his voice ringing out across the quiet yard. The crime you are accused of, he says, is not a simple theft of property. It is a crime of witchcraft, a secret and hidden malice, a corruption of the soul. Therefore, you will not be judged by fire, which is a worldly element of punishment. You will be judged by the purest and most sacred of elements. You will be judged by water, the ordeal of cold water. A strange, momentary wave of relief washes over you. Compared to the searing, unimaginable pain of grasping a red-hot bar of iron or plunging your arm into a boiling cauldron, this sounds almost merciful. There will be no burning, no blistered and festering wound to be examined in 3 days' time. The verdict will be immediate. But then, as the murmuring of the crowd dies down, the village priest, Father John, steps forward. He looks at you not with pity, but with the stern gaze of a spiritual physician about to administer a difficult and necessary medicine. He is here to explain the rules of your trial, to lay out the bizarre, inverted, and inescapable theological trap that you are about to walk into. The initial relief you felt begins to curdle into a new and more profound kind of dread, a fear based not on the pain of the test, but on the terrible, paradoxical nature of the verdict itself. Father John steps forward, his presence bringing a new, more solemn gravity to the proceedings. He is here to transform this secular punishment into a sacred trial. He raises a hand to quiet the murmuring crowd, and he begins to explain the profound, divine, and terrifyingly simple logic of the ordeal you are about to face. My children, he begins, his voice carrying across the yard. When the testimony of man is clouded by lies and suspicion, we must turn to a witness that cannot be deceived. We turn to the elements of God's own creation. You are accused of a secret crime, a corruption of the soul. Therefore, your soul must be tested by the purest element we know. It must be tested by water. He makes the sign of the cross in the air. Remember, he continues, that water is God's holiest substance on this earth. It is the water of the great flood that washed the world clean of its sin. It is the water of the river Jordan in which our Lord himself was baptized. And it is with this very element that I, as God's humble servant, baptize your own children, washing away the stain of original sin and welcoming their pure souls into the loving flock of Christ. He pauses, letting the sanctity of the image settle in the minds of the villagers. You listen, a cold dread beginning to form in the pit of your stomach. You can see the terrible logic beginning to build. Because this water, especially water that has been blessed and consecrated for this holy purpose, is an agent of divine purity, he says. his voice growing stronger. It cannot abide the presence of a tainted and corrupt soul. It has a will, a sacred instinct given to it by God himself. An innocent soul, a soul that is clean and unburdened by the grave mortal sin of which you are accused, will be accepted by the pure water. The water will embrace the innocent, drawing the body down into its depths as if welcoming it home. In this way, God will show us that the soul is pure and worthy of joining with the holy element. He then turns his gaze directly on you, and he delivers the final, devastating piece of this theological puzzle. But a guilty soul, he says, his voice now like the tolling of a bell. A soul blackened by witchcraft, a soul that has perjured itself with false oaths of innocence. Such a soul is an abomination, a source of filth and corruption that the pure water will refuse. The holy element will reject the sinner. It will cast the guilty body out. It will push it to the surface, refusing to allow such impurity to mix with its own God-given clarity. He makes the verdict plain for all to hear. Therefore, when you are put to the water, we will all bear witness to God's judgment. If you sink, the water has accepted you, and God has proclaimed your innocence before all of us. If you float, the water has rejected you, and God himself has declared you guilty. The inverted, inescapable logic of the trial settles over you like a shroud. It is a perfect, diabolical, no-win situation. Your mind races, grappling with the two terrifying possibilities. If your body, with its natural buoyancy and air-filled lungs, floats on the surface of the water, you will be deemed guilty. You will be immediately pulled from the river by your accuser, only to be handed over to the reeve to face the punishment for witchcraft, likely being burned at the stake or hanged. If, by some miracle or misfortune, your body sinks into the cold, dark depths, your innocence will be triumphantly declared to the entire village. But you will be at the bottom of a river, with your hands and feet bound. Your good name will be restored at the very moment you may be drowning. It is a trial where the only way to prove your innocence is to die, and the only way to survive is to be proven guilty. You stare at the priest's pious face, and you wonder if he understands the brutal reality of the test he is administering. Historians of medieval justice and theology have noted that the ordeal of cold water, more than any other, appears to modern sensibilities to be a rigged game. They debate whether the priests and judges who used it were consciously aware of the simple physics of the human body, and were therefore using the ordeal as a near certain method to confirm a verdict of guilt that the community had already reached, especially in later, more frantic witchcraft accusations. Or did they so profoundly believe in the potential for a divine miracle that these practical considerations were simply irrelevant? The priest finishes his explanation. A murmur of understanding and awe passes through the crowd of your neighbors. They see no contradiction, no cruel paradox. They see only the elegant and infallible wisdom of God's justice. Your fate is sealed. You now understand the terrible rules of the game you are forced to play. The elder steps forward again. The time for theory is over. The time for preparation has begun. The priest has finished speaking, his words of divine logic sealing your fate. Alfred, the elder, gives a curt nod to the village reeve, who takes you by the arm. You are led away from the crowd, away from your grieving accuser, away from the dead ox that started this whole nightmare. As you are walked towards the small empty hut, where you will be confined until the day of your trial, your mind, numb with a cold and quiet terror, retreats from the immediate horror of your situation and takes refuge in history. You know that this strange, terrifying ritual you are about to face is not a new invention. It is a practice as old as the hills, a form of justice that has been used by your people for as long as anyone can remember. You recall your grandfather telling you stories of his own grandfather, a man who was accused of theft and had to prove his innocence by the ordeal of hot iron, the scar on his hand a permanent testament to God's favorable judgment. This judgment of God, you know, is far older than the church that now presides over it. It is a remnant of an ancient world, a practice with deep roots in the customary laws of the Germanic tribes, the Franks, the Goths, the Anglo-Saxons, who came to rule these lands after the great Roman Empire fell. It was their way of resolving disputes when there were no witnesses, a direct appeal to the old pagan gods of iron and water and fire to show them the truth. And this makes the priest's involvement all the more strange. How did this ancient heathen custom become a sacred Christian ceremony? You see Father John, his face full of pious certainty, preparing to bless the river water, and you wonder at the journey this ritual has taken. Legal historians debate the Church's complex and often uncomfortable relationship with the ordeal. Did the early missionaries and bishops eagerly adopt the practice, seeing it as a powerful tool for conversion? A way to prove that the Christian God was more powerful than the old pagan deities, by showing he could control the elements and perform miracles of judgment on demand? Or was it a more reluctant compromise, a practical acceptance of a deeply ingrained folk tradition that they knew they could not possibly stamp out? A case of if you can't beat them, baptize them, where the Church tried to control and sanctify a popular superstition by wrapping it in the authoritative robes of Christian ritual. Whatever the reason, the ordeal is now a fully accepted part of the law, not just of the village, but of the kingdom. You have heard merchants and travelers speak of the great law codes of the kings of old, the Salic law of the ancient Franks, the laws of the great English kings like Aethelstan. And Canute, these books of judgment, you are told, contain specific and detailed rules for the administration of the ordeal. They specify the exact weight of the hot iron, the depth to which the arm must be plunged into the boiling water, the length of the rope to be used for the ordeal by cold water. This is not a rough village custom. It is a formalized, state-sanctioned, and divinely ordained legal procedure. It is a world away from the other great system of law you have heard stories about, the law of the Romans. They, with their great empire of stone roads and written words, had a different system. They had trials, lawyers, witnesses, and evidence. But their empire fell, and their complex legal system crumbled with it, replaced by this older, more mystical, and more terrifying way of finding the truth. And you understand, in a way, why it persists. It offers something that a trial of men never can: absolute certainty. In a case like yours, where there is no evidence, no confession, and no witnesses, what are the elders to do? How can any mortal man claim to know the secrets of another's soul, to know for sure who is lying and who is telling the truth? The ordeal takes this impossible, terrifying burden of judgment away from flawed human beings and places it directly in the hands of an all-knowing, infallible God. For your accuser, Godwin, and for the rest of the village, it is a great comfort. It promises a clear, simple, and miraculous resolution to a messy and uncertain problem. For you, of course, it is no comfort at all. You arrive at the small, windowless hut that will be your prison for the next 3 days. The reeve pushes you inside and bars the door from the outside. You are left alone in the dim, cool space, the air smelling of dust and disuse. You are no longer just an accused woman. You are now a participant in an ancient ceremony, a living vessel through which God himself is being asked to speak. You must now prepare your body, through fasting and prayer, for this sacred and terrible encounter. The reeve takes your arm, his grip firm but not unkind. You are unsteady on your feet, your body weak and lightheaded from 3 days of fasting. As he leads you into the village square, you see that the entire community has gathered. They are silent, their faces a sea of conflicting emotions: pity, morbid curiosity, fear, and a grim, pious sense of anticipation. They are not here for a festival or a market day. They are here for a miracle. They are here for you. Your destination is the stone church, the house of God, the only place fitting to begin a sacred trial. You are led through the heavy oak doors, out of the bright morning sun, and into the cool, dark, and echoing space. The air inside is thick with the familiar, holy scent of cold stone, beeswax, and the lingering ghost of frankincense. The entire village files in behind you, packing the wooden benches. You are not led to a seat with your family. You are led to the very front, where you are made to kneel on the cold, hard flagstones before the altar, isolated and on display. Father John, the priest, is already at the altar, dressed in his finest vestments. He begins the service. It is a full and formal Mass, but it is a Mass with a specific and terrible purpose. The Latin chants, which usually sound comforting and familiar, today seem filled with a heavy, ominous weight. The prayers are not the usual ones for the harvest or for the health of the king. They are prayers that speak of judgment, of truth, of the unmasking of secrets, and of the awesome, terrible power of an all-seeing God. The service is designed to formally summon the divine presence into this room, to make the church a sacred courtroom. On the altar itself, beside the holy chalice and the book of Gospels, you see the instruments of your ordeal. There is a long, thick coil of coarse hemp rope, and there is a simple wooden bucket filled with water drawn from the very river where you are to be thrown. During the most solemn part of the Mass, the priest turns his attention to these mundane objects. He is about to transform them from simple tools into sacred instruments of God's will. He sprinkles them with holy water, making the sign of the cross over them. Then he begins the prayer of consecration, a powerful adjuration in which he speaks not just to God, but directly to the element of water itself, as if it were a sentient being, a servant waiting to be commanded. I adjure thee, O creature of water, he chants, his voice echoing in the silent church, by the name of the living God, who made thee in the beginning, who commanded thee to be separated from the dry land. I command thee by the name of his Son, Jesus Christ, who was baptized in thy stream in the Jordan. I command thee not to receive the body of this woman, if she be guilty of the crime of which she is accused by word, or by deed, or by false oath. Instead, make her to float upon thy surface, as a sign of her sin, to be seen by all these faithful people. But if she be innocent, he continues, his voice rising, then I command thee, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, to receive her into thy depths. Take her into your pure embrace as a sign of her innocence, so that all may know that God has vindicated her. You listen to this prayer, this direct command to the river to either accept or reject you, and the sheer, unshakable certainty of it is terrifying. From the corner of your eye, you can see the faces of your neighbors in the pews. They are watching with rapt attention, their faces filled with a mixture of pious awe and grim fascination. Liturgical historians debate the sincerity of a congregation during a Mass for an ordeal. Was the entire village genuinely united in a moment of profound religious faith, breathless with anticipation for the divine judgment they were about to witness? Or was there a large element of morbid spectacle to the proceedings, a grim excitement that was more akin to the thrill of a bear-baiting than a holy service? Before the Mass concludes, Father John turns to you. He offers you one last chance to confess your crime before God and the community, to save yourself from the trial to come. You look up at him, your body trembling with weakness and fear, and in a voice made hoarse by disuse, you whisper, I am innocent. He nods slowly, accepting your final plea. He then gives you the Eucharist, the consecrated wafer, placing it on your tongue. The act of swallowing the holy bread without choking is seen as a small, final proof of a clear conscience. The wafer feels like a piece of dry paper in your parched mouth, but you manage to swallow it down. The Mass is over. The sacred preparations are complete. The water has been blessed. The ropes have been sanctified. God has been formally invoked. All that remains is for the verdict to be delivered. The priest lifts a large wooden crucifix from the altar. He turns not to the congregation, but to the great doors of the church, and he begins to walk. The reeve takes you by the arm, and pulls you to your feet. You follow the priest. And behind you, you hear the sound of 100 benches creaking as the entire village rises as one to follow you. The solemn, silent procession to the place of judgment, to the cold, dark water of the river, has begun. The great church doors swing open, and you step out into a world that seems impossibly bright and loud after the cool, echoing silence of the stone church. You are weak and lightheaded from your 3-day fast, and the morning sun is a dazzling, painful glare. The reeve's grip on your arm is the only thing that keeps you steady. You are no longer just an accused woman. You are now the central figure in a grim and sacred parade. The procession forms with a solemn, practiced order. At its head is Father John, the priest, holding a tall wooden crucifix before him as if it were a battle standard. He begins to walk, his pace slow and deliberate, and you are led directly behind him. Your accuser, Godwin, is given a place of honor. He is handed the coiled length of thick hemp rope that was blessed upon the altar. He will be your handler, the man who holds the line between your life and your death, his face a mask of grim, pious satisfaction. Behind Godwin walk the village elders, and behind them, in a great, silent, shuffling mass, follows the entire population of your village. This is the walk of shame, a slow journey through the heart of the life you once knew. You pass the village well, the very place where your careless words first took flight, and you see it now as the scene of a terrible crime. You pass the cottages of women you once considered friends, and you see them watching you from a distance, their faces unreadable, their fear and pity a wall between you. Every doorway is empty, because everyone is here, walking behind you, their silent, collective gaze a heavy weight on your back. You can hear the shuffling of their dozens of feet on the dirt path, the soft, nervous cough of a man in the crowd, the occasional wail of a baby. The silence of the procession is more damning than any shout. Historians of public ritual study the atmosphere of these strange parades of justice. Were they always silent, solemn, and grim, like a funeral procession for a person who was not yet dead? Or were they sometimes noisy and chaotic, with factions of the crowd shouting support for the accuser or jeering at the accused, blurring the line between a sacred ceremony and a grim participatory festival? Today, the silence is your verdict. The village is not here to support you. They are here to watch you be judged. The weakness from your fast has wrapped your mind in a strange, cottony detachment. The world feels unreal, dreamlike. You feel the sun, surprisingly warm on your linen shift. You feel the reeve's hard knuckles pressing into your arm. You see the familiar path that leads out of the village and across the common pasture towards the river. It is a path you have walked 1,000 times on your way to gather reeds or to wash your linen. Today, you walk it as a condemned woman on her way to meet her judge. The procession leaves the village behind and makes its way to the riverbank. The destination is a specific spot known to everyone. It is a place where the river is wide, deep, and slow-moving, with a high grassy bank that forms a natural amphitheater. This spot has been used for this very purpose for as long as anyone can remember. It is the village's place of divine judgment. The procession comes to a halt at the water's edge. The crowd spreads out along the bank, forming a wide, silent semicircle around you. They have become spectators in a sacred theater, and you are the only actor on the stage. Father John moves to the very edge of the water, the crucifix held high. Godwin stands beside him, gripping the coiled rope. The reeve stands behind you, his hand still clamped on your arm. You look at the water. It is dark, green, and cold. It moves with a slow, powerful, and utterly indifferent current. This is the element that holds your fate. In a few moments, it will be asked to read the secrets of your soul and deliver a verdict from which there is no appeal. The air is thick with a tension so profound it is almost a physical force. The entire world seems to be holding its breath, waiting for God to speak. The long ceremonial preparation is over. The trial itself is about to begin. The priest raises his hand, and the low murmuring of the crowd dies away into an absolute, expectant silence. The final preparations are to begin. The reeve steps forward, untying the coil of thick rope from his belt, and approaches you. His face is impassive, his movements efficient and practiced. The first act is one of utter and complete humiliation. He instructs you to remove your woolen outer tunic, leaving you in nothing but your thin, worn linen shift. This is partly a practical measure. Heavy woolen clothes could trap air and make you float, thereby interfering with God's judgment. But it is also deeply symbolic. You are being stripped bare, literally and figuratively, before your community and your Creator. There are no worldly possessions to hide behind, no status, no pretense. There is only you, your soul, and the accusation. The cool breeze on your bare arms and legs makes you shiver, a coldness that has nothing to do with the temperature of the air. The reeve then orders you to sit on the damp, cold grass at the river's edge. He takes a length of thinner, stronger cord, and he begins to bind you. This is not a simple tying of the hands and feet. It is a specific, ritualized, and symbolic act. He pulls your right arm behind your back and bends your left leg up behind you. Then, with a series of rough, efficient knots, he ties your right thumb securely to your left big toe. Your body is forced into a cramped, awkward, and off-balance position. He repeats the process on the other side, tying your left thumb to your right big toe. You are now trussed like a caught animal, your limbs bound across your body in a grotesque parody of a cross. This binding, you know, is not just to keep you from struggling. It has a deeper, more spiritual purpose. The priest would explain it as a necessary precaution. By binding your body in this way, they are containing your spirit, preventing you from using any hidden personal magic or calling upon any demonic assistance to resist the water as holy power. If you are indeed a witch, as Godwin has claimed, this binding is meant to render your dark arts useless. It is a physical act designed to ensure a pure, unadulterated spiritual verdict. You sit there on the cold ground, a helpless, trussed bundle, and you contemplate the logic of it all. Anthropologists who study ritual and symbolism debate the primary purpose of this specific crosswise binding. Was it, as it seems, a purely practical measure, a sophisticated technique to prevent any possibility of swimming and thus cheating the test? Or was its main function deeply symbolic, a ritual act designed to render the accused completely passive and helpless, forcing a total surrender of their body, their will, and their very soul to the divine? Judgment that was about to be expressed through the sacred water? Looking down at your own immobilized limbs, it feels like both. It is a perfect prison of both flesh and spirit. Now that you are bound, the reeve takes the end of the long, heavy hemp rope, the one that was blessed upon the altar, and ties it securely around your waist. He cinches the knot tight. This will be your lifeline, the rope that connects you to the world of the living. He hands the other end of the rope to your accuser. Godwin takes it, his hands white-knuckled around the coarse fibers. His face is a mask of grim determination. He is now your executioner, or your savior, the man who will pull you from the water, whether you are deemed innocent or guilty. You are now fully prepared. You are stripped of your worldly garments. You are bound in a way that makes struggle impossible. You are tethered to a rope, held by the very man who has condemned you. You have been transformed from a person into an object, a question that is about to be posed to the river. The reeve and another strong villager take you by the arms and lift you to your feet. You can barely balance, your body contorted and helpless. They half carry, half drag you the final few steps to the very edge of the high riverbank. You look down. The water is dark green and brown, swirling with a slow, powerful, and indifferent current. It looks impossibly cold. Your heart is a frantic bird, beating against the cage of your ribs. This is it. The stage is set. The audience is waiting. All that is left is for the priest to give the water its final, holy command. You stand at the precipice, a bound and helpless offering on the altar of the riverbank. The crowd is silent, their eyes fixed on you and the dark water. The reeve's hands are on your shoulders, holding you steady. Godwin stands beside him, gripping your lifeline, the thick hemp rope. But before the final, violent act of casting you in can take place, there is one last ritual to perform. Father John, the priest, steps to the very edge of the water, his back to you, and raises his hands to the sky. He is about to consecrate the river itself, to formally command it to act as the hand of God. This is the most sacred and most terrifying part of the ceremony. The prayers and blessings inside the church were a general preparation. This is a specific, targeted invocation aimed at this very patch of water at this very moment in time. The priest is about to turn a simple river into a divine instrument of judgment. His voice, when it comes, is no longer the gentle, storytelling voice of his Sunday sermons. It is the formal, resonant, and powerful voice of a man performing a holy sacrament. He begins to chant in Latin, the ancient and mysterious language of the Church. The words are unintelligible to you, but their rhythm and their solemnity are a powerful force, a sound that seems to make the very air grow still and heavy. This is not an improvised prayer. The words he speaks are ancient, drawn from the official holy books of the Church, the sacramentaries that contain the rituals for every occasion, from baptism to exorcism. The ordeal, as strange as it is, has its own formal written liturgy, a testament to how deeply this practice has been woven into the fabric of your faith. After the Latin prayers, he switches to the common tongue so that you, your accuser, and all the assembled villagers can understand the divine command that is being given. He is no longer speaking to God. He is speaking for God directly to the water. O creature of water, I speak to you now with the authority of the Church. And in the name of the Most High, he proclaims, his voice ringing out over the quiet field. I command you to remember your holy purpose. You are the water of life, the water of purification, the water that washes away all sin. Therefore, I place a holy curse upon this accused woman, if she be guilty. A gasp goes through the crowd. This is the heart of the magic. He is not just blessing the water. He is conditionally cursing you. If this woman's soul is blackened by the sin of witchcraft, he continues his arm now pointing directly at you. If her heart is heavy with malice, and her oath of innocence a foul perjury in the eyes of God, then I command you, O holy water, to reject her. Cast her out. Hold her upon your surface for all to see, and let her floating body be the sign of her guilt. He then lowers his arm and softens his tone slightly. But if this woman's soul be clean, if her oath be true, if she is innocent of this terrible crime, then I command you, O gentle water, to absolve her. Open your embrace and receive her. Draw her down into your pure depths as a sign of her innocence, and let her sinking body be the proof that God himself has declared her righteous. You listen to these words, and you feel the perfect, inescapable nature of the trap closing around you. The water has been given its divine, contradictory instructions. Historians and theologians are fascinated by the language of these ordeal prayers. They represent a unique and complex intersection of Christian petition, Germanic legal tradition, and what seems to be a form of practical magic, or theurgy. The priest is not just asking God for a sign. He is actively commanding a natural element to behave in a supernatural way, using the power of his holy office and the sacred words of the ritual to bend reality to a divine purpose. Father John makes the sign of the cross over the swirling dark water one last time. His work is done. He has consecrated the river, turning it from a simple body of water into the right hand of God's own justice. He steps back from the bank, his face serene and confident, the face of a man who has done his holy duty and is now simply waiting to witness the result. The reeve's hands tighten on your shoulders. Godwin takes a firmer grip on the rope, his knuckles white. The crowd leans forward as one, a collective body holding its breath. The silence is absolute, broken only by the gentle lapping of the water against the bank and the distant cry of a bird. This is the moment. The prayers are finished. The commands have been given. The stage is set. All the weight of history, of tradition, of law, and of faith has been brought to bear on this single terrifying point in time. You look at the dark, cold, and now holy water, and you send one last, silent, and desperate prayer of your own into the world. Then the reeve pushes you forward. The reeve's hands on your back are firm and decisive. There is no final word, no last moment of hesitation. There is only the push. For a fraction of a second, you are airborne, a strange, weightless moment where the world seems to turn over the gray sky below you, the dark water above. Then you hit the river. The shock of the cold is absolute. It is a physical blow that drives every last bit of air from your lungs in a single, sharp, involuntary gasp. It is a cold so deep and so penetrating it feels as if the river is made not of water, but of liquid iron. Your mind, already hazy from fasting and fear, goes completely blank, wiped clean by the overwhelming, primal sensation of the cold. You sink for a moment into the murky, green-brown darkness. The water is a confusing, disorienting world. You see nothing but swirling silt and the faint, wavering light from the surface far above. The silence is profound, a sudden and total absence of the watching crowd, replaced by the dull, booming sound of your own frantic heartbeat in your ears. Panic, cold and sharp as the water itself, begins to rise in your chest. Your body's instincts scream at you to swim, to kick, to fight your way back to the air. But you cannot. Your limbs, securely bound in their crosswise prison, are useless. You are a helpless, trussed bundle, a stone dropped into a well. You can only thrash ineffectually, a series of spastic, useless movements that churn the water around you but do nothing to propel you upwards. Then you feel a sharp, powerful tug from the rope tied around your waist. It is a sudden, jarring connection back to the world above, a reminder that you are not entirely alone in your struggle. Godwin, your accuser, holds the other end of that rope. The village custom dictates that the rope must not be too long, just a few arms' lengths. It is a rule designed as a small, practical measure of mercy. If you were to sink, proving your innocence, the short rope would give your accuser a chance to haul you back to the surface before your lungs could fill with the river's dark water. Even in this brutal judgment, there is a built-in chance for a miraculous, innocent survival. Your initial plunge into the depths has displaced the water, and now your body, with the precious air still trapped in your lungs, and the light linen of your shift holding small pockets of buoyancy, wants to rise. You break the surface, gasping, sputtering, choking on the foul-tasting river water. For a glorious moment, you breathe in the cool morning air. You see the world again, but it is a strange, terrifying, wavering vision. You see the faces of your neighbors lining the bank above you, distorted and shifting, looking down at you with unreadable expressions. You are a spectacle, a struggling, helpless creature at the center of a silent, communal gaze. And you are fighting a battle not just with the water, but with the very laws of nature. You instinctively hold on to the air in your lungs, knowing it is the only thing keeping your head above the surface. Physiologists and historians who have analyzed the ordeal suggest that the outcome was often a simple matter of physics, not divine pronouncement. A person's natural buoyancy, determined by the ratio of their body fat to their muscle, the volume of air in their lungs, and even the way their clothes trap small bubbles of air, would frequently be the deciding factor. The great judgment of God was often, in reality, just a simple pass-fail test of Archimedes' principle. You do not know any of this. You only know that you are fighting to breathe, and that you are not sinking. You kick and twist, but the awkward binding of your limbs and your own body so will keep you on, or near the surface. You are not being drawn down into the water's pure embrace. You are floating. And as you bob there, a helpless, struggling speck in the middle of the cold, dark river, you hear a new sound from the bank. It is not the sound of people rushing to save you. It is a low, collective murmur, a sound that starts with one or two voices and then spreads through the entire crowd. It is a sound of grim, terrible, and fulfilled expectation. Through the water in your ears, you hear the priest's voice, clear and final. The water does not receive her, he proclaims. The pure, holy element has made its choice. It has cast you out. The verdict, direct from God himself, has been delivered for all to see. The priest's words strike you with more force than the cold water. The water does not receive her. The phrase is picked up by the crowd, first as a murmur of awe, then as a growing, certain, and terrible roar. She floats. God rejects her, guilty. From your desperate, bobbing perspective in the middle of the river, you see the horrifying truth dawn on the faces of your neighbors. The very act of survival, the frantic, instinctual struggle that has kept your head above the surface, has become the undeniable proof of your sin. Your body's refusal to sink is being read as your soul's refusal by God. The priest's terrible, inverted logic has come to pass. The pure baptismal water has found you to be an impurity, a foulness to be cast out. You float, therefore you are guilty. The verdict is absolute, delivered not by a jury of men, but by the infallible will of the river itself. In an instant, the entire atmosphere on the riverbank changes. The last vestiges of pity or neighborly concern evaporate from the faces in the crowd, replaced by a hard, fearful, and righteous anger. You are no longer Goody Miller, the woman they have known your entire life, the woman they might have had doubts about accusing. You have been transformed. You are now simply the witch. The divine judgment has given them permission to unleash their fear, to confirm their darkest suspicions. The men who had been silent observers now shout insults at you, their voices full of scorn. The women who had looked at you with pity now pull their own children closer, shielding them from your gaze, making the sign of the cross to ward off your evil. Godwin, your accuser, begins to haul on the rope. He is not pulling you to safety. He is reeling in his catch. He is dragging a convicted criminal, a monstrous thing, from the water. The look on his face is no longer one of simple grief for his lost ox. It is a look of terrifying, holy triumph. His accusation has been vindicated by a miracle. God himself has taken his side. You are being dragged through the cold water towards the muddy bank, a bound and helpless parcel of confirmed guilt. A person from another time might assume that this ordeal, this terrifying, near-death experience, was the punishment itself. But it is not. Legal historians who examine the records of these trials note that the ordeal was never the sentence. It was merely the trial, the divinely guided method of reaching a verdict when all human means had failed. The punishment for the crime itself was a separate matter, to be decided and carried out by the secular authorities, now that God had made the truth so terrifyingly plain. You have not been punished yet. You have only just been found guilty. You are hauled unceremoniously from the water and dumped onto the muddy bank at the feet of the reeve. You lie there, a soaking, freezing, and shivering heap of disgrace. You look up at the faces of the people you have known your entire life, and you see no recognition, no shared humanity. They shrink back from you, afraid that even a drop of the river water from your clothes might carry the taint of your sin. You are now officially an outcast, a piece of filth rejected by the holy water, a blight on the community. The ordeal, which began with the solemnity of a mass, ends in a hubbub of angry, fearful voices. The priest makes a final sign of the cross, not as a blessing for you, but as a ward of protection against you for the rest of the flock. He has done his part. He has revealed God's will. The rest is now in the hands of the law of man. You know what the punishment for witchcraft is. It is not a day in the stocks or a simple fine. The punishment for a crime so heinous, a crime against both man and God, is fire. The ordeal by water, you realize with a final chilling clarity, was merely the prelude to an ordeal by fire, one whose outcome would not be left to chance or divine intervention. The reeve roughly pulls you to your feet. The crowd parts before you, creating a wide, fearful path. Your brief, terrible trial is over. Your slow, certain march towards your final punishment has just begun. The reeve's grip on your arm is like a band of iron. He hauls you, soaking and shivering, through the parted crowd of your former neighbors. Their faces, which you have known your entire life, are now close to you, hard and righteous and fearful. The shared humanity you once felt with them has been washed away by the river, replaced by the cold, hard certainty of your guilt. You are no longer one of them. You are a thing to be disposed of. You are not taken back to your home. You are not even taken to the empty hut where you were confined for your fast. You are marched directly to the small, dark, and windowless shed behind the reeve's own house, a place normally used for storing tools or locking up stray animals. This is your death row. The reeve pushes you inside and bars the door. You are left alone in the cold, damp darkness, your wet linen shift clinging to your skin, your body trembling with a cold that is bone deep. The ordeal is over. The judgment is past. But your punishment has not yet been named. You know, however, what it must be. The crime of witchcraft is a crime against God, but its punishment is carried out by the world of men. The Church, in its official capacity, does not execute. The priest, Father John, performed his sacred duty by revealing God's judgment. Now he has washed his hands of you. Your fate has been handed back to the secular power of the Lord, represented by his steward and his reeve. This is the grim partnership of medieval justice. The Church identifies the sinner, and the Lord disposes of them. You sit on the cold dirt floor of the shed, shivering, and you wait. The hours pass. The adrenaline from the ordeal fades, leaving behind a profound, hollow exhaustion. You feel strangely calm, detached. You have been through the worst, and you are still, for now, alive. You wonder when the sentence will come. Late in the afternoon, you hear the wooden bar being lifted. The door opens, and the steward, the same man who presided over your hearing in the tithe barn, stands there. His face is grim. He has come to deliver the sentence of the manorial court, a sentence that has now been divinely sanctioned. You have been put to the judgment of God, he says, his voice flat and formal, and God has found you wanting. The holy water has rejected you, proving the truth of the charge of malicious witchcraft brought against you by your neighbor. He does not ask if you have anything to say. The time for words is long past. For this crime against God and against the peace of this manor, he continues, the court sentences you to be purified by fire. You will be taken to the crossroads tomorrow, at noon, and burned at the stake, so that your corrupting influence may be utterly cleansed from this community, and your soul may be commended to God's final mercy. The words are what you expected, but hearing them spoken aloud still lands like a physical blow. Burning, the ultimate purification, the final, agonizing answer to a crime of spiritual filth. You wonder, in a detached sort of way, when your fate was truly sealed. Legal historians and theologians debate the exact moment a person's destiny was fixed in these proceedings. Was it the moment your neighbor, Godwin, first pointed his finger at you, his grief turning to rage? Was it the moment you failed to find 12 neighbors to swear for you, the moment the weight of community opinion tipped against you? Or was it truly the moment your own body, with its damnable buoyancy, refused to sink in the cold river water? You realized that the ordeal was not a trial. It was merely a final, terrible piece of theater, a ritual to legitimize a conclusion that had been reached long before. For a lesser crime, You might have been declared an outlaw. Your name cried out at the court, stripping you of all legal protection. You would be cast out from the community, a wolf's head, whom any man could kill without penalty. But your crime is too great, too dangerous for that. Witchcraft cannot be allowed to simply wander away into the woods. It must be seen to be destroyed, cauterized from the body of the community in the most public and dramatic way possible. The steward finishes speaking. He looks at you for a moment, not with hatred, but with a kind of weary administrative duty. You are a problem that must be solved, a piece of paperwork that must be filed. He turns and leaves, and the reeve bars the door once more, leaving you alone in the darkness with your sentence. You have one more night on this earth. You will not spend it in fear. The terror has been burned out of you, leaving only a great, hollow emptiness. You think of your family, of the shame they will have to bear. You think of the ox, the source of all this misery. And you think of the cold, dark water of the river. It occurs to you with a final bitter irony that you have proven your innocence by dying after all. You just haven't died yet. You sit in the absolute darkness of the shed, a condemned soul waiting for the dawn. Your personal story, in all its specific and agonizing detail, is nearing its end. But it is a story that has been played out with minor variations countless times across the lands of Christendom. You are a victim of a system of justice that feels ancient, eternal, and unshakable. But even as you wait for the fire, that system, unbeknownst to you, is already beginning to die. Far away from your small village, in the great cities of Europe, in the universities, and in the palaces of popes and kings, a new way of thinking is taking root. Scholars are rediscovering the lost texts of Roman law with its emphasis on evidence and testimony. Theologians are beginning to question whether it is right to demand a miracle from God as a routine part of a legal proceeding. The intellectual foundations of the ordeal are beginning to crumble. And then, in the year 1215, a great and powerful pope named Innocent III convenes a massive council of the Church's most important leaders at his Lateran palace in Rome. They are there to reform the Church, to clarify doctrine, and to set the course for the future of all Christendom. And among the many decrees they issue, one will eventually change everything for people like you. It is Canon 18. The decree is simple, but its consequences are revolutionary. It forbids all clergy, from the highest archbishop to the lowliest village priest, from participating in or giving a blessing to any form of judicial ordeal that involves a risk of death or serious injury. No priest may bless the hot iron. No priest may consecrate the water for the ordeal. No priest may preside over a trial by combat. The Church, in a single powerful move, officially withdraws its spiritual sanction from the entire practice. The judgment of God is officially closed for business. Without the priest, without the solemn Mass, without the holy prayers and the consecrated elements, the ordeal is stripped of its divine legitimacy. It can no longer be called the Judicium Dei. It reverts to what it once was, a brutal and superstitious pagan custom. A secular lord or a village elder might still try to use it, but without the priest's involvement, it is no longer a sacred trial. It is simply a form of torture. This papal decree creates a crisis in the legal system. If the ordeal can no longer be used to determine guilt in cases where there is no evidence, how is a court to find the truth? This legal vacuum becomes the fertile ground for the growth of a new, and in its own way, revolutionary idea, one that will become the cornerstone of a future justice system, the trial by jury. The judgment of God is slowly, haltingly, replaced by the judgment of 12 ordinary men. The question is no longer, will God perform a miracle? But has the accuser presented enough evidence to convince your neighbors? The focus shifts over a very long period of time, from divine intervention to human reason, from superstition to testimony. You, of course, will not live to see this new world. And the change was not instantaneous. Legal historians debate the immediate impact of the 1215 decree. Did the practice of ordeal, so deeply ingrained in the popular culture and legal customs of rural areas, simply vanish overnight? Or did it persist for decades in remote manners like your own, a form of folk justice that died slow? And stubborn death, even without the official blessing of the church? Your fate is a testament to the fact that the old ways died hard. You are a victim of an older world, your guilt declared by a splash in a river, your death sentence pronounced by a steward in a barn. Your story is one of the last tragic gasps of a dying form of justice. The future will have its own cruelties, its own miscarriages of justice, its own witch hunts, but it will, for the most part, not be a future of trial by ordeal. As you sit in the darkness, you are a martyr, not for your faith, but to a legal system that is already becoming a historical curiosity in the great centers of power. The world, ever so slowly, and far too late for you, is moving on. Your death tomorrow will be a tragedy, but it will also be an anachronism, a final, cruel performance of a play whose final act has already been written. And so, the story of your ordeal comes to its inevitable, quiet, and somber end. The fear of the water and the fire, the faces of the crowd, the cold finality of the sentence, let it all begin to fade now. Let the darkness of that small, cold shed dissolve into the gentle, comfortable darkness of your own room. That world of divine judgment and brutal certainty is a world of the past, a story to be told, not a life to be lived. You are safe from it now. You are in a place of peace, a place of quiet, a place where your innocence is not a question to be answered by a river or a flame. Feel the simple, profound comfort of your own bed, the soft weight of your own blanket. Listen to the steady, peaceful rhythm of your own breathing. There are no more trials to endure, no more verdicts to await. The only judgment now is the gentle, easy judgment of sleep, and its only sentence is one of deep and restorative rest. Let go of the story, and let the quiet of this moment carry you away into a peaceful, dreamless night. End of script. Sweet dreams.